Okay, that's close enough. Afternoon. So just during the talk today, I've got a Disney film reference that I'll make at some point, and I've got some bags of sweets for anybody who can spot it. So you have to listen really carefully and see if you can spot the Disney film. Today we're completing our series on idols. A few weeks ago, Jonathan looked at idolising money, and 2 weeks ago we looked at idolising love and relationships, seeking to find our ultimate value and purpose in the love of another human being. If that is to idolise someone else, then today we're going to flip that and look at idolising our own achievements, idolising success. The world that we live in can make us really vulnerable to this. There can be a constant pressure from very early to prove our personal worth through our own achievements. In school, there's a pressure to succeed and do well in exams. Later on, there's pressure to succeed at work, to be seen to be successful in whatever career we have chosen. On social media, we often see the best of everyone else's lives plastered across our phone screens, and it adds to that pressure to keep up, to match or to beat their success. I love sport, but that is another example of an area where that pressure to succeed and be at the very top is so evident. Pascal was recently completing an online form, and there was a question about her goals, and one of the drop-down options was for fame. To be famous and seen as successful is something that many people strive for in our world. This is a quote from Madonna. "I have an iron will, and all of my will has always been to conquer some horrible feeling of inadequacy. I push past one spell of it and discover myself as a special human being, and then I get to another stage and think I'm mediocre and uninteresting. Again and again, my drive in life is from this horrible fear of being mediocre. And that's always pushing me. Because even though I've become somebody, I still have to prove that I'm somebody. My struggle has never ended, and it probably never will." Now, Madonna is someone who has achieved a level of earthly success that all of us here will almost certainly never attain. Yet, it is not enough. The way she describes that constant desire to succeed is like a drug. She can get a high, but it will never last. And she has to go back for more, constantly striving to prove herself, whilst admitting that it will probably never be enough. In his book, Counterfeit Gods, Tim Keller says, "More than other idols, personal success and achievement leads to a sense that we ourselves are God, that our security and value rest in our own wisdom, strength, and performance. The world tells us to strive for success, to put its pursuit above all else. If we can achieve earthly success, then we will be somebody. As a person, we will have value, worth, and purpose. This is what leads to the idolatry of success, of putting the pursuit of earthly success above God, of finding our identity in our own achievements. But the truth is that such success doesn't actually provide that lasting purpose and value that our hearts so crave. It might give the impression of it temporarily. In the Madonna quote, she momentarily felt she'd made it, but this quickly wears off. Your team might win the league, and that's probably a good achievement, but the next season all starts again, everyone's back to where they started. So why does the world tell us this? Why does it promise so much? Here is a quote from an American business magazine. Of all the subjects we obsess about, success is the one we lie about the most. That success and its cousin money will make you secure. That success and its cousin power will make us important. That success and its cousin fame will make us happy. Security, importance, happiness, all things that our hearts crave, and which success and achievement claim they can provide. To continue the Tim Keller quote from earlier, the false sense of security comes from deifying our own achievement and expecting it to keep us safe from the troubles of life in a way that only God can. During this series, we looked at the parable of the rich fool in Luke 12. The man was successful, building up earthly riches, yet that night his life was demanded of him. While all of that success might have given the man security, comfort and happiness, it was all irrelevant the next morning. We get that impression of security and control, of value and purpose, but it is temporary and is not what our hearts are truly craving. We were created to worship, and that is what our hearts are made to do. That is why there is that space which can either be filled by God or by an idol. In his first talk on idols, Jonathan refers to Romans chapter 1 and verse 21 to 25. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him. But their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal man and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshipped and served created things, rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. The truth of God is exchanged for created things. Our hearts choose to worship created things rather than the Creator. Now, last time I tried to emphasise how love and relationships are, in themselves, absolutely not bad things. The same is the case with success. In itself, it is not a bad thing. There are plenty of examples of successful people in the Bible. Joseph immediately comes to mind, but there are lots of others. God promises Joshua in Joshua 1:8, then you will be prosperous and successful. In 1 Chronicles 4, Jabez prays that God would bless him and increase his possessions, and God granted this. So success in itself is not bad, nor is working hard for success and being ambitious necessarily a bad thing. When I was at university, I used to have a post-it note on the wall in front of my desk with Colossians chapter 3 verses 22 and 24 written on it. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for men, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. That was there to remind me that I could still be serving God by working hard at my degree. To work hard and be ambitious and to want to succeed in my studies could be a part of serving him where I was. With this verse, it can be easy to immediately jump to thinking about working in work, in our jobs or towards our studies at school or university. But actually it begins with whatever. In every area of our lives we are to work with all our hearts, as if we are working for God. Not just our jobs or studies, but in raising children, in church, in friendships, every area. Ken Costa is a Christian and part of Holy Trinity Brompton in London. He also had a highly successful career in banking and finance, and writes in his book, God at Work. Many Christians regard ambition for anything other than saving souls as a distraction from what they regard as our true calling to evangelism. This is a misunderstanding of the Bible. God has called us to extend his kingdom in the world in partnership with him. This can apply to many aspects of life, not just so-called Christian work. It is surely right to be ambitious about our contributions to this. If our ambition is aligned with what God has called us to do, then we are right to ask him for his blessing on it, so that we can make a difference in the world and bring him glory. Idols are almost always good things, but which take a position in our heart they are not intended to take. As with love and relationships, success also falls into this category. It is not a bad thing to be ambitious or successful, but the desire for that must never take the place of God in our hearts and lives. He must always come first, above all. As I've been preparing for these talks, what has stood out to me is actually that these idols at the root are all the same. Ultimately, it comes down to that very first and most important commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. When we break any other commandment, we break this one also. And when we have idols, we break this by not loving him with all of ourselves. So what do we do? As we said before in this series, the idols in our lives, including success, cannot just be expelled. The need of our hearts to worship something will still be there. So if we are to overcome our idols, they must be replaced. Let's look now at Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 to 4. Since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Idolatry of any form is to set our hearts and minds on earthly things, on created things. It is to not love God with all of our heart, mind and soul, but rather on the pursuit of money, the love of success, the love of another, or any other of the created things that could become idols. Instead, this passage says we are to fix our hearts and minds on things above, on Jesus. He must become more attractive to our hearts than our idols. When he is, that longing of our hearts will be satisfied in him, rather than by earthly created things. It is to rejoice and rest in everything that he has done for us. I quoted Madonna earlier, and those words spoke of that constant striving for success in order to prove her worth. There is a fear in her words, the fear of being, as she put it, mediocre. But we need not have that fear. Jesus came to earth and died on a cross precisely because he sees us as anything but mediocre. When we truly grasp that, the cost to him which he willingly paid because he loves us, then we can rest in his love for us and everything that he achieved for us. Earlier in the year, we looked at Hebrews, and I spoke in January about the better rest offered by faith in Jesus. That rest is being able to rest from the work of trying to save ourselves, of earning our way to heaven, and of trying to prove our righteousness. Instead, we simply trust in the finished work of Christ. We can enter into his presence and have peace and security in and with him. We are not saved by how hard we work or by striving to please God to be successful in his eyes. We are saved because of his love for us. We are somebody because he sees us as somebody and was willing to die on a cross for us. It is not work and dedication that keeps that miracle burning. It is simply his love for us. If we come to fully appreciate this, then our love for him will outweigh any earthly idol. As the hymn, "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross," says, "Love so amazing, so divine, demands my soul, my life, my all." That amazing love that he showed for us demands that we give all of ourselves to him. Then it will be a joy to live for him in all that he has for us, and we will be able to expel the idols from our lives. Our identity, our value, our purpose does not come from earthly success, from the view our boss has of us, how successful we look on Facebook, or from how much money we earn. Our identity is found in him alone. But we will probably be tempted by idols and tempted to love things of this world more than Jesus our whole lives. To protect ourselves, this is where we turn to Ephesians chapter 6. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Jesus did exactly this when he was tempted in the wilderness. He took up the sword of the Spirit and answered each temptation with, "It is written." The most effective way to resist the temptation of idols, or in fact any temptation, is to know the word of God. That is the only offensive weapon included in this passage. But to have that sword ready, we must be taking in the word of God. Sometimes it can be hard in such busy lives to find the time. But I don't think we need to pressurise ourselves into doing a detailed Bible study every single day. Finding small amounts of time to read or listen to the word means we are taking in his word. And he can then bring it to mind when we need it. On the train, in the car, doing the dishes, that sword is ready. I've noticed on the few occasions I've spoken here now that in the week running up to it, it feels like so many things get in the way of preparing. Perhaps bedtimes are particularly challenging, or stuff happens which means I'm not really feeling like writing this when I get the chance. It just goes to show that the battle is there. The devil will use any opportunity to stop us from doing what we are called to be doing. Similarly with idols. those temptations will come, which is why we need to ensure that armour is always on and at the ready. So how do we draw our series on idols to a close? We've looked over the last few weeks at earthly things which can become idols in our lives. Money, relationship and the acceptance of another human being, and today it's success. An idol can be anything which is more important to you than God, and which seeks to satisfy the desire of the heart of happiness, meaning, identity, and the desire to worship. It can be very often things that are in themselves very good things, and perhaps no more so than in the case of relationships with others. Jonathan spoke about some of the ways to try and identify when things have become idols in our lives. What comes out when we are under stress, the shaken bottle, and also what we drift towards when we have all the time in the world. Whilst lots of different things can be idols to each of us, underneath it all, they are all the same. They all come down to not keeping the first commandment, to not loving God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, and with all of our mind. We must ensure that that place in our hearts is taken by Jesus. When he is first in our lives, all these earthly things will slip away and will instead occupy their rightful place. Jesus was willing to come to earth and be crucified for his love, because of his love for us. We need not strive for earthly success in order to find our identity, nor look for this in the love of another human being, nor place our hope and security in money. We don't need to prove we are somebody. And what Jesus did for us demonstrates that he certainly does not see us as mediocre. When we truly grasp this, the idols of the world, the created things, will fade next to his glory. It's all summed up perfectly in a single verse from a famous hymn, which seems a fitting place to finish our series. Turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace.